the Azov Movement and transnational right-wing extremist networks. And focusing on American group motivations here. So when it comes to the American extreme right, the Azov movement frequently has been viewed as either an organization and broader structure to imitate, or as an opportunity to obtain military training and experience. And I would like to echo what Michael said earlier, that before continuing, it's really important to note that it's become really almost impossible for non-Ukrainians to join the regiment, and especially since potential fighters would have to enlist with the Ukrainian National Guard. But despite that reality, when you look at some of these American extreme right groups, that hasn't completely sunk in. And in some cases, there is still this misguided desire where people think that this is this, it's something that can be done with a medium amount of effort, and they are wrong. So kind of looking at American group motivations, we can see emulation, we have groups and individuals that want to imitate the political and military organization of Azov, of the movement, and either want to create armed movements with political components themselves and militia elements, or also there are accelerationist groups in the United States and in Europe that would like to learn from Azov, but kind of function as separatists themselves, or in some cases, something more apocalyptic. And they're more interested in learning the military arts and sciences from this. And then additionally, a big part of this as well, there are groups that emulate the militant culture of the movement as a form of metapolitics in an effort to transform youth culture and the extreme right wing to be more oriented towards militant activism. These groups want to recreate the subculture associated with the Azov movement, with the idea that extremist groups should present a cleaned up, militant, right-wing counterculture based on camaraderie, white supremacy, and separatism, and the singular purpose of fighting against what is portrayed as a corrupted modern world destroyed by non-European and liberal influences. So you sort of see this division, and also there's overlap in American groups in the way that they tend to look at the Azov movement. And then on top of this, there are individuals who have a desire to receive military training and acquire combat experience. This has been said multiple times. This is something that is not possible anymore. And you also have people who are not necessarily affiliated with a specific group, but might want to learn a set of skills that would be off limits to them in their home country. So looking at historic sites of interaction between Azov and American and European and broader extreme right groups, the Azov movement had a presence on the extreme fascist Iron March web forum. That forum was active between 2011 and 2017. And Iron March was a very narrowly focused online gathering site for some of the most radical white supremacists, and was instrumental in the founding of the American and also European group Atomwaffen Division, the British group National Action, and others. And the Iron March Forum has helped build some of these kind of like loose connections and loose kind of online networking that would later influence young neo-Nazis in the United States and abroad. Additionally, as Michael stated, the Azov movement has additionally been active on social media in the past, including Facebook, where in the past they have promoted the group. The group has additionally used Telegram messaging services and VKontakte to spread their message. And especially in relation to Facebook, in an article in Time magazine, a Norwegian Azov recruiter did use Facebook to locate and communicate with individuals who he thought would be a good fit for the organization. Additionally, the Azov movement has additional outreach throughout Ukraine, including conferences organized by the Azov movement affiliated organizations with European groups, including the Third Way and Youth Wing of the far-right National Democratic Party, both in Germany. And additionally, Ukraine has been a travel destination in the past for extreme right-wing networks. So part of that has been in relation to the Asgard's National Socialist Black Metal Festival, So where in addition to hearing neo-Nazi bands has been in the past a huge networking opportunity for various extreme right groups, movements, and individuals to meet, get to know one another, and exchange ideas. Additionally, mixed martial arts tournaments have been a draw for various right-wing extremists and have been a networking and propaganda opportunity. Some of them have taken place at a now closed bar and club where Azov members met with like-minded members or like-minded visitors, excuse me. And additionally, there were visits to Azov Movement from two members of the British neo-Nazi group National Action in December 2017, members of the American white supremacist group Rise Above Movement in 2018, and various French right-wing extremists. Kind of moving to some of these American right-wing extremist networks, and kind of commenting, going back before, on members of groups allegedly primarily interested in receiving advice and training with the American neo-Nazi group Atomwaffen Division. The group's founder, Brandon Russell, was reportedly in contact with representatives of the Azov movement through Iron March in 2015, requested advice that could be applied to growing the membership of his own organization. Sort of these online spaces speak to some of the transnational nature of the modern extreme right, both in the US and Europe. The late Andrew Onishuk, an early member of AWD, was interviewed on an Azov podcast and similarly was interested in lessons that could be learned from the organization. And as Michael said, two Atomwaffen members reportedly tried to join the Azov Regiment before they were deported from Ukraine in October 2020. They were not able to join. And one of those Atomwaffen members, Ryan Birchfield, was also previously a member, allegedly, of the accelerationist neo-Nazi group, the Base. And multiple other individuals in the Atomwaffen Division and other accelerationist groups, including the Base and Feuerkrieg Division, have expressed a desire to fight in the Azov Regiment, but have never traveled to Ukraine. And kind of going back again, that there's this idea in the American extreme right of the fighting in Ukraine is something that they can plug into. And this is not something based on the reality of the situation, but this is a very strong desire in the American far right. And I think it's kind of important to recognize that, but also recognize that is a desire and not something that is necessarily possible in kind of looking at Azov and looking at similar movements. And then, there are groups that are primarily interested in imitating and importing cultural aspects of the Azov movement. So the best example of this in the United States is the Rise Above movement and the affiliated active clubs. The active club movement, these groups have sought to create a white supremacist youth movement based on the idea of militant white supremacist counterculture. RAM's leader, Rob Rundo, has referred to Azov as, he's the quote, the future in a 2017 podcast, and has participated in Azov movement affiliated MMA events. And then, there are individuals and networks interested in kind of a combination of both of these things, such as propagandists and white supremacist internet personalities, including a website that promotes the work of the American neo-Nazi James Mason, the author of the influential book Siege, and a Telegram-based white supremacist and merchandise distributor who is active in the so-called White Lives Matter movement. I'm going to sort of skip ahead a bit. And kind of just quickly address the issue of, there's this question of designating Azov as a foreign terrorist organization. Some US lawmakers and counterterrorism professionals have advocated that Azov be designated as a foreign terrorist organization due to the role the group has played in kind of right-wing extremist networks and the possibility of providing assistance and training. And despite being a right-wing movement that has received the attention of violent extremist groups in the US and elsewhere, Azov has not engaged in terrorist activity, nor does it directly threaten the security of US nationals. And I think this is kind of important in thinking about the way that the US uses this FTO designation and perhaps other tools that can be used in the tool belt. Important to note that Azov Regiment is part of the Ukrainian Ministry of the Interior. And there are kind of secondary effects that disincentivize the group from direct involvement with American and European extremist networks. A good example of this was the prevention of two American alleged Atomwaffen members from joining. It's a good example of how behavior has possibly been shaped by institutional involvement. And so kind of in answering this question, I'm going to agree with my esteemed colleague, Dr. Kasper Rakowek, that Azov does not meet the necessary requirements to be labeled a foreign terrorist organization by the US government. And I'm